people, not the pre-made reality TV on Bravo TV.
I mean, you got to think back when this whole influencer thing began, and it was within the last 10 or 15 years, and I think that people are really trying to find something that's relatable to them. So
that's what we're doing here at GES Podcast. I had to get up because obviously my YouTubers come here to see my ass. I have a big wedgie, and here it is. YouTube, you always get exclusive. Go blow it up. We're gonna start. These are my new slippers. And I was gonna ask you, I'll tell you. Where do I throw that shit? I feel like I need to dispose it far away. Not in my trash.
What?
The replacement?
Oh. Well, maybe find
out away. Far away.
A less negative way to dispose of it.
How?
Throw it in the river.
Where's the river?
The river walk downtown.
I'm giving you the heads up. We're gonna have a crime and murder. But nobody's gonna know. We're gonna have a crime and murder podcast.
Okay, hopefully we're talking about the same thing, because I'm not talking about a body.
No, we're talking about the I'm not gonna. We're not talking about a crime that we committed. I'm talking about disposing certain objects, but because we were both into crime and murder, I think we have to have a special episode. You and Camille.
Forensic psychology. I think that's what she's talking about.
I want to talk about killers. Yeah. I love serial killers. But
might have been criminal.
Oh my God. No. We're going to start YouTube. Sorry. Okay. And like I said, I'm going to have a song before this. I'll be able to insert it hopefully this weekend. And this won't be out till not this week, the next one. Welcome to the GES Podcast. And today I have a very special guest. She is a close friend and also a mom, retired military, wife, friend, somebody's cousin, I'm sure. She does it all. So I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Yep, so thank you. Yeah, my name is Kate and I retired military. I did 21 years in the Army and retired Master Sergeant, and then I was kind of uncertain about what I wanted to do with my life, and I just spent the last 5 years on this journey, and I finally decided I wanted to change my major from logistics to psychology, and I should have my bachelor's by the end of this year, and I will immediately move into my master's program. Yes, I'm married, I have 2 children, and that's kind of it, I guess.
And we're gonna make her scream because I'm loud. I mean, your voice is so soft. Look at it.
I should talk.
It's okay.
A little better.
Yeah, you can speak up here. I don't want to make a lot of noise because I know this. I'll edit it. Okay. I want to face you now that we introduce yourself and we're just having a conversation like friends.
Right.
Disregard the microphone and the cameras and maybe me twerking. It was very important to have you here with me today because of what you're studying. Can you tell us what you're going to school for?
Sure. So I'm going to school for psychology. With the goal of being a forensic psychologist. I know that that's a long-term goal. I probably just based off of the schooling that I will need to achieve for that, I probably won't get that for the next 6 years or so, 6 to 8 years. But in the meantime, I would like to work in rehabilitative counseling, so working with people who are suffering from trauma like grief, PTSD, addictions, stuff like that. So I'm hoping within the next year I can get a job as a clinical technician, and then move along the way, and hopefully maybe one day I'll have my own practice and I'll be able to really help people. So.
Now you mentioned a few conditions there, grief, childhood trauma, which we honestly, addiction, I'm not gonna lie, you mentioned everything that I've had. And I feel like if you pick that field, it's very important to me. When I was growing up with therapists and was forced to go to therapy and I never listened, I always looked at them and asked them, have you done drugs? Have you lost your parents? Or you just read it in a book? I feel like experience is going to help you be successful.
So that's actually that's a good point. So like for me, I've been through so many horrific things in my life, and this podcast is not long enough to go over all that. But kind of in a nutshell, you know,
We'll have a book.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would need a book. But just kind of in a nutshell, from my first conscious memory, which is when I was 4 years old, to right around the time that I got married to my husband now, I experienced all types of trauma, and a lot of it stemmed from my childhood trauma and the lack of boundaries that I learned and the abuse that I was enduring. My father was extremely abusive, and he ended up going to prison. I was 22 years old when I finally spoke up about it and went to authorities, and he ended up going to prison, I wasn't the only person he abused. He abused a lot of people in his life, physically, sexually, and I was really the only person that spoke up. And I really can't explain to you what came over me and why I did that. Maybe I was just trying to get back control of my life, because my life was completely out of control. It bled into my adulthood. I hadn't learned boundaries when I was a child.
22 is pretty adulthood too.
Yeah, so I had my first child when I was 23, but from the time that I left home, even when I was a teenager, and I experimented with drugs when I was 13.
Same.
So I didn't realize, hindsight's 20/20. I didn't realize back then the reason why I was doing those drugs or becoming promiscuous and sleeping around and doing those things. The reason why I was doing that was because I was hurting, because I was, trying to numb the pain of reality of what I was dealing with. And, as I became an adult, I realized that, it was something I had to process it. And I didn't even process all of this stuff. Yes, I reported him, my father and all that. And then I was sexually assaulted multiple times in the Army. But I never, actually, I tried to report that when I was in the Army, but
females in the Army, we know.
It was brushed off, but that was a long time ago. But I didn't process a lot of that till I was retiring. So the year that I was retiring from the Army, I sought help. I went through intensive therapy, and it was in intensive therapy that I learned how to process everything appropriately, how I should be responding in situations, how to communicate better with people, how to, love myself. And that is number one. And so, when I heard your podcast, and you were talking about your childhood,
this is about that.
Right.
Our first years of life, we're gonna.
Yeah, and that resonated with me, because I could hear it in your voice when you were speaking.
Okay.
That, you were getting a little choked up, but it's good to release it, because when you bottle that up and when you hold it in, and it's like that kettle, and it's the water's boiling, and when the water's ready, right, it makes that noise, that big noise. Yeah. But when you put a cork in it and you prevent the steam from releasing, right, what's going to happen eventually? Right?
Blow up?
It's going to blow up.
Blown up.
And if you don't process that, and you don't start from the beginning, then it's just going to fester internally, and then it bleeds out in your life in different ways.
Many ways. Yeah. And that's why we're here. Why?
But that's why I wanted to be a psychologist.
I was just about to, oh my God, you took that out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I was about to, and this is why she picked the right career, because there is no way, I'm sorry if I scream in Spotify, but we're loud in this place. I think she picked finally her calling, because there was no way, and I can't do that, right? Because not only that, you have to study a lot, which is very important when a therapist. I don't want somebody that is book smart. Power to you. It's like, I wouldn't talk to a millionaire about how to become poor, right? It kind of makes.
I wouldn't talk to somebody who's poor and how to become a millionaire.
That's
sure.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like
absolutely.
that, and you having these experiences that you lived in now that you're learning. She's here to help me, because coincidental, guys. She wrote a paper on childhood trauma.
I did.
How crazy though? After my episode though. How is this even tied in? How is this a sign?
It's like it's fate. right?
It's
I was
fate.
meant to come here and talk about this. And it's weird because like
I never talk about my childhood.
Yeah, and
My
neither do
husband
I.
doesn't know about it. I
Well,
said, if you listen to that episode, you're gonna find things that because I'm not.
Yeah.
And I've been with him for 12 years. I don't know. Let me tell you what miserable. No, he just knows the Pauline that he met at 27.
sure.
I never hide anything if he asked me, but he never asked me. I don't ask him, how was your 5 years old?
And that's probably just how you learned to process your trauma, you know, as a child, because you may not have had
Self-harm.
well, I mean, as far as that communication piece, you know, with your spouse, you may not have had somebody you can go to when you were young,
No.
and you had to bottle that up, and you just had to suck it up and move on, right? And as much as I love my mother to death, I mean, she is my hero, okay? And she's been through some pretty traumatic stuff too. But she really wasn't there for me on the emotional support side.
Same as my
So
mom.
growing up, even though like she loved me,
Right.
you know, she loved me very much, and she cared for us and she provided for us. She just, if I cried and I needed a shoulder to cry on, she would just be like, you know, she would compare my situation with somebody who's worse.
That's Mexico. Oh my God! You
And-
describe it every
yeah.
to compare. You're not South. You're not.
I mean, I'm
dying.
from Southern
You're not
California,
related.
so yeah. But you know,
There was no attention. There was no recognition that at that moment you were hurt.
it was
Can
compare
we
and
just talk
despair.
about that part? Is like
Yeah.
nobody ever gave you the grief, and nobody
No.
cared that I was going through all these things
Right.
either, because they were just be like, we're all going through it. So now
Yeah.
we're all in this fucking shithole together.
Yeah, and it was just, I didn't learn how to process grief.
No, me either.
I didn't learn how to process the pain, and so I just kept it to myself. And for the same reason that you maybe haven't disclosed a lot of your personal life
Yeah, it's
to your
hard.
husband, I went many years without telling my husband a lot of details, and honestly, I didn't want to tell him
No, me
because
either.
I didn't want to disturb him with that stuff, because some of it is it's
Terrifying.
unimaginable.
No, I know.
you
It's out of a movie.
Yeah, you know, exactly, and you tell
People don't
people,
believe it
they
where I come
don't.
from. I'm just like, this is my house. Like my
yeah,
right here. This is how I grew up,
Yeah.
and there's nothing.
yeah.
But when you're and we're talking about promiscuity, we're gonna uncover things that you think that you're a certain way, but it's been in your head since you were little because of your experiences. Do you want to go into how we start, because this is news to me, that the characteristics on your adulthood start as a baby.
True. So the paper that we were talking about, the
Yes.
paper that I just finished, it's on personality theories, and we had to. And there's so many out there. Okay, so
Oh no, I know
if-
a few persons that have 76 personalities in one.
Well, no,
fucking
the
people.
personality theories.
Oh,
so,
okay, I was gonna
so and how you become who you are,
bitches
right?
are
How you,
crazy.
so how you develop your personality. There's a lot of theories out there. So if you're listening to this right now, and you know what I'm talking about, if I misspeak, I stand corrected. But there are a lot of theories out there. Not every theory makes sense to everybody, right? But in my class, we had to pick a theory that was relatable to us, that resonated with us, and then we had to write a paper on that and explain our personality based off that. And I chose Erik Erikson's theory, which is the 8-stage development, like of human development. And he believes there's 8 stages to the human development. And just
Let's
based
hear
on, well, so I don't have it all with me right now, but
The baby.
the big one. So they have like infancy, right? So when you're a baby, like a newborn baby, you are dependent on your caretaker, which is typically your mother or father. And you depend on them for your needs, such as like comfort or feeding, okay? And when you're communicating those needs, if they're not being met, right, then you may develop distrust or mistrust with initially as an infant. And that's his theory, right? And some people will say that that even bleeds into, you know, maybe toddler or preschool ages too.
Good question. Also, so we can discuss this part with the baby. Does this mean when the baby's crying, when the baby's hungry, when the baby's tired?
So
Do they
this
need
just means
attention?
excessiveness,
Okay.
right? So like obviously if your baby's crying, you're not every time you're not going to attend to their need. I know, I've got 2 kids, and
I was gonna say,
sometimes you
the
gotta let
Mexican
them
way is
cry.
let them cry until they go to sleep.
Sure.
But that's kind of detachment.
As long as their needs are being met. If their diapers changed, if they've been fed,
Oh, no,
if they're
they-
not sick, like if
Talking
there's
about neglection then.
yeah. So when I'm talking about neglect,
Yeah, me too. I'm talking
Yeah.
about
So
neglect.
when
That's a problem.
when you're neglecting your child, and that is throughout their whole childhood. But then there's different stages, and it goes into like your toddler age, and what you're expected and your brain is developing at that time. So I believe it was like autonomy, like body autonomy and like independence, right? As a toddler, you're starting to learn, like you're walking and you're exploring and things like that. So when you're constantly being criticized or, you know, feeling guilty or shame for what you're doing, then, you know, that again, that's developing your personality. You know, so, and it goes from like infant to 1 to 3, and then you go from 3 to 6 and 6 to 12, and like there's just a whole time, he has a whole stage development of human development, and I had to write about each one of those stages, and then I had to write how my personality developed within each one of those stages. And as I was writing the paper, now mind you, I haven't spoken about these things
Me
since my
either.
therapy 5 years ago when I went through
This
intensive
is
therapy. And as I was writing the paper, I was getting kind of like you were, like on that podcast. I was kind of feeling shaky and
I
feeling
was
a
turning
little
around.
nervous. Yeah.
I couldn't keep my head
Yeah.
straight. Like my voice was breaking out.
Yeah.
I'm not even saying anything, just that I'm living it in my head.
Yeah.
Didn't we talk about this? Did you put yourself, Kate, your current Kate, in your little girl self when you were writing that paper?
I did a couple times, and I tend to disassociate. Have you ever heard of dissociative identity disorder?
Yes, when you separate.
Okay. So when I went through intensive therapy, I learned a lot about myself, and I suffer from dissociation sometimes, and that's when I'm triggered or I'm experiencing some, you know, sense of trauma. And what happens with that is, you know, when you're triggered, right? When you're re-experiencing those emotions, sometimes you mentally go into a different state. Sometimes you go to that place. Sometimes you go to a different place, and you drift off in your mind. Right, you're somewhere else, and then you snap back into it. I've worked really hard on recognizing that, and so when I was writing that paper, I did notice I was starting to disassociate a little bit because I was drifting off in my head. It was triggering for me, and so then I was like trying to think of other things when I was supposed to be writing this paper. I got through it, and my husband had called me, and I said, "Do you want to listen?" And he's my biggest advocate, you know. And I read the paper to him, and halfway through the paper, I stopped. And I got choked up, and he was quiet, and I said, "Just give me a minute," and I cried.
It was this close to crying.
Yeah, and it's a process, and you know, so that's something I wanted to talk about really quick because that's a process.
Bring the point.
So, grief, right? When we are faced with loss in our life. Okay, and loss can be anything. It can be loss of safety, loss of control, loss of a spouse or a loved one or job. Loss can be any number of things in your life, and it's basically when there's an end, there's a change in your life and it ends, and there's a change in your behavior. Okay, and so you've lost something. How we learn to cope with that we learn that when we're young. And a lot of us don't learn the proper skills on how to process that. And grief is something that you have to bite at it. Like they say, how do you what's the thing about how do you eat an elephant or whatever, like one bite at a time? How do you eat the elephant? You chew one bite at a time. You can't try to take it all at once.
They don't fit, honey.
It's yes.
Too big.
And so for me, as far as grief and recovery went, I had to create this timeline. It's called a loss history graph. And basically I had to take this paper and I had to draw a line across, you know, parallel. And the first, I drew a line on the left and drew a line on the right, 2 vertical lines and the horizontal line. And on the left-hand side is where you would write down a line, and you'd write your first conscious memory. So for me, my 4th birthday party, I turned 4 years old.
And you started.
I can remember that. That's the earliest I can remember. I mean, I have a vague memory of being in the hospital when I was a baby, and I remember my mom looking at me and saying, "It's okay," and that's all I remember. I had surgery when I was 2 weeks old, emergency surgery. I almost died. But for some reason, I remember being in the hospital and my mom looking at me. So maybe that's my first conscious memory, but I'm going to go with being my 4th birthday. And then for some reason, I can remember so much after that, okay? So my timeline, I wrote that. And then on your timeline, you're going to draw a line. And on that line, you're going to write down the first loss, okay?
Oh.
The first loss of your life. And the length of the line when you draw it down is going to represent
How big of a loss.
it was.
So, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, so you write across the whole timeline from the first conscious memory to now.
Somebody need a wall.
Yeah. If you saw my timeline, it's barely fit anything in it. I mean, there's so much. You can actually go.
Like this. Look at this. And
you can go top and bottom.
And Kate's gonna explain this. Comedy is my. I'm gonna get serious.
That's actually a defense mechanism. That's a coping mechanism for people who are uncomfortable or.
You're touching me. Yeah, you're touching the subject.
Yeah, when you touch a sensitive subject, a lot of times people will use sarcasm or humor, and to disguise that. But it's a survival. It's a coping mechanism. It's what you did to survive.
Right. So, I don't want to be sad or angry.
So I'm not offended by it.
Okay.
It's just the way some people cope with their stress.
Get back to your line.
So get back to the line. So you draw, and so by the time you're done with your timeline, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to find the longest line.
Oof.
And process that first.
What?
So you may think that you're supposed to do it from
the first
one down. No. So mine, believe it or not, I didn't realize until I did my graph that the loss of my grandmother hurt me more than all the trauma that I went through in my life.
What?
Yeah.
You have to write it. I guess I have to write it down. You have to think about it and feel it. It was like
loss.
a whole.
She is my second mother. I mean, she was my mom. Obviously, raised my brothers and I on her own, but we lived across the street from my grandmother.
Was your grandma?
Yeah,
Your love was your grandma. Yeah. That's part of your heart. Is what people.
She was the good.
She was a good one, like my mom.
Yes, so she was the good for me, and when I lost that,
it's gone forever, honey.
It was the biggest hole for me, and. Yes, the trauma that I went through was very significant, very traumatic and awful.
But it doesn't feel empty. It doesn't make you empty. Right. I know the exact same feeling you're talking about. The hole, the nothing, and no one, and not all the money in the world, and not all the love from your husband, and not all your kids are ever gonna fill up. You're gonna be empty because of that grandma. That biggest loss.
And that's how it feels, and it feels that way because, there's a conflicting feeling, right, with grief as well, and it's like this misconception that like once you process it, you put closure to it. So there's no closure, but what's conflicting about the loss of especially like a loved one is the fact that maybe you're happy for them that they're no longer suffering, right? But the fact that you can't see or touch them anymore and they're not there, it is devastating. And that was a huge thing. I processed two different things when I was in intensive therapy. That was one, and the other one was the loss of control of when my father assaulted me when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I can distinctely remember. I could draw the room for you and everything and what everything looked like. And I was a little girl,
It's stuck in your memory.
Yeah.
It's a trigger.
Huge trigger.
And I'm telling you, and I've abused drugs. And the fact that I remember certain things in my life scares me.
Yeah.
Because I did drugs to forget. Mm-hmm. To forget and to burn memories and to never remember because you are numb when you're high.
So what they call that's called a short-term energy releasing behavior. So a lot of times when we're faced with
reality,
that reality, right? The trauma or the things that make us uncomfortable, people will resort to. Most people have a STIRB, right? So the STIRBs are shopping, drinking.
Oh,
drugs.
Christina, my best friend, has a shopping.
It could be sex. It can be the gym.
Mm.
It can be any number of things are your STIRBs.
Cheating.
Cheating, but that's why I said sex is promiscuity, things like that. Sometimes people will do it because they are looking to feel good and they want to forget. So, again, when you got the whole, it's a whole process, so you got to identify what are my STIRBs, what are your STIRBs,
But we can agree in this message with your grandma and my mom that even though I'm okay with it, I moved on. I might not talk about it a lot. It's not something easy. It still hurts. But it's never gonna be gone. That whole people think that you're grieving, you're doing so good. I am, but I'm empty. There's a part of my heart that's always gonna be empty.
you just have to learn to, and that's where, and I brought all this information for you to look over, like after the podcast.
Go, because I do
like
need
that.
therapy.
But
this is for after.
because this
so
isn't-
thank
this
you,
isn't-
Kate, for
but
telling
this-
everybody.
I'm
I
doing-
need to go and sense therapy.
I'm doing that. I'm giving this to you because we're
Shit.
talking about some heavy stuff,
Well, I've
right?
been in
And,
a psych ward,
and I
too.
don't know about you, but me, when I start talking about this stuff, I definitely have nightmares. You know, sometimes
Oh,
it
of
creeps
course.
into
I
my dreams.
had nightmares last night with just
Yeah.
with a certain situation that happened to me, but I'll tell you after the podcast.
So it's good to learn how to cope with that
And
stuff.
train with it. So
it's
real.
it's good to learn how to cope, right? It's good to learn healthy coping mechanisms instead of drinking, drugs,
No,
sex,
I know.
things like, even though those may be fun
They're
temporarily.
real fun.
But that's why they're called short-term energy releasing behaviors. You know, anger is also a stirb.
That's zero
So-
alcohol. For everybody on YouTube that doesn't know me, I am not drinking. But I don't drink, just drugs.
You know, it kind of reminds me of
But it was bad. I was an alcoholic.
well,
Like my
me
dad.
too. I went
Like
through
my dad.
I went to AA.
We had
I went through
me
AA
too.
for 6
Yeah,
months.
I was in like 5 rehabs, but your
Yeah.
dad was an alcoholic.
My dad was a terrible alcoholic.
Mine too.
Terrible.
Like we had the worst
Terrible.
dads.
And my ex-husband, he beat the crap out of me. He was an alcoholic. Everything.
We're gonna need a lot of
Colombian.
episodes. I can't. Hey, I'm
You
gonna say
mentioned
this
something
again.
before
I said it
about
again. I am
Hispanics.
not gonna fuck anybody my kind. Please. I do not fuck with Latinos. I don't. Okay.
Yeah, but we just we all process things differently, and you got to find those healthy coping mechanisms to get you through it. And I have found what mine are, and for me, running, exercise, yoga,
Sauna.
phoning a
You
friend,
love
the
the
sauna.
sauna.
I do. I love the sauna.
You love your tub, me too. But you
Yes.
have a really nice hot tub that I need to
Hot
come get in their hot tub machine.
Yeah. I like to paint and draw.
Not me. I'm zero.
I love to listen to music. I love to dance. You know, so you got to find what are those healthy coping mechanisms to help you.
Can you agree twerking is part of my coping
Sure.
mechanism? People think
Yeah.
it's funny. It really releases me. It makes me happy.
Yeah. But again, it's just.
Now, since we're going through this timeline and we had my get to know me episode, I only rub off, by the way. I only went like this through the outside of my birth to 11 years in my childhood, and it mentioned my cousins, and they reposted me, and I didn't tell nobody, but I know I put a story where it says, please teach your kids to be good friends. And that just talked to me, because they go, you don't know it, that they go home to no love. And that like just symbolized to me a lot, because when I posted that, I tagged like immediately thought of my friends when I was 6. I remember them. The ones that I said that will take me to their house and feed me, and their families treated me like I was their own. And the fact that almost 35 years later, I still have contact with them, and they remember we're talking about those 6, 7, 8. We were from first grade. I think in America it's first till what's the before? Secundaria is for us.
So for elementary.
Well, no.
So for
So I'm
us-
6 years
so-
old. I met
so-
this
oh,
people
6
at
years old is usually like what, first grade?
Yeah, you guys
Yeah.
call it until when? Because we graduated when my mom died. 11. It's the last time I saw them.
So first grade through 6th grade is elementary school, and so 14th and 9th grade, so 13, 12, 11 is like 6th grade.
Yeah, we call it primaria, kinder, primaria, secundaria. Now you only understand I went to school in Mexico all the way to high school. I didn't transfer my credit. I didn't come to America until college. So all this time I'm raised in Mexico. And those friends, I tag them because I remember that my only highlight of my day was going to school to see my friends. So because I had such a good friends at just a young age, I feel like that's why I'm such a good friend, because I knew what my friends did for me when I was not home. So to me, I value friendship a lot. That could be why.
I think that, and you know, I can only speak from my own experience and from what I've read and from what I've seen. A lot of times, people will seek out things that they were missing from their life, in their childhood, right? And what's hard about that is sometimes we don't set good boundaries when we do that.
I know.
Because we open our doors and we avoid like red flags and stuff like that. And I was guilty of it for a long time, and I never learned to set healthy boundaries. So for example, like, you know, my father, right? So parents are supposed to protect you. your parents are supposed
Not
to.
my dad.
Right, but
They try to kill me.
So when your parents become the boogeyman because they're supposed to protect you
They're
from
scary.
the boogeyman, and when they become that, who do you trust?
No one. My friends in school, but they didn't even know what I was going through though. I never trusted them.
But you still desire to be loved,
Yes.
right? Because we all want to be loved, and sometimes when you don't learn those boundaries because you were never taught those, we open our doors to anybody, and we allow ourselves to get hurt.
I know.
And it's not our fault, right? Because and if anybody's, whoever's listening to this right now, don't blame yourself for, other people's actions and what they've done to you. But we do at some point, and we should take some responsibility. So let's just say hypothetically you take at least 1% responsibility of what's
And
happened to
step back.
you, and step back and say, do reflection and say, what can I do differently? Okay. And a lot of times it has to go all the way back to how our attachment styles are, or how do we, how were we treated when we were younger? Were we loved? Were we not loved? Did we learn boundaries? Things like that. So recognize that and make those changes within yourself, and then you will slowly start to see improvement in your life.
But I do want to let them know, you have someone, I do want to let them know that don't stop not trusting people or being mean. But maybe, which I'm trying to learn, is like she said, set some boundaries, because people will take advantage of that kindness, of that love. And I just want to give it because that's all I had when I was little, and it wasn't coming from my house, it was coming from my friends from school. And I loved going to school, and then I was a nerd, and then trouble, and she was reminding me all these things that I forgot that I was actually a happy kid. But nobody understands why. Why are you so happy when you live in terror? Because I focus on the good things all the time.
Yeah, and I think that also...
And I'm happy they're still my friends, by the way. At least.
But I think that there's also biological markers that we have, where you're genetically disposed with. So we have characteristics and traits that we're born with, right? Okay. I believe, just based off of knowing you, I believe that you were born an extroverted person. I'm an ambivert, meaning I have extroverted tendencies, but I also have introverted tendencies. And but somebody who's extroverted, they look externally in the world for
the better good, the greater good,
things to make them feel good, And people who are introverted, they're more introspected, so they look more internally within themselves. They tend to be more calm and stuff like that. So if you take somebody who has these characteristics or these traits, and you throw in trauma.
Oh yeah, I have a lot of that.
And you throw in all these other things that happen to you in your life and your environment, it can exacerbate. It can make it worse.
Oh, is that why I'm crazy?
It can, it can make it come out
so
more
loud and so annoying. My husband, see, it's all my childhood trauma, honey. Are you listening to this episode? He's in the other room.
Yeah. So it says here, for extroverted children, does your child easily speak loudly and raise his or her voice?
I was dancing in the floor, twerking, and my knees bleeding in my sister's graduation. And believe me, I've never wanted to be the center of attention. I was just it. Unconsciously, just by being the craziest person.
I mean, it's just who you are,
But I don't want it sometimes. Trust me, people think it's what I want. I don't want that. I just want to be loved and happy and healthy.
So part of that is processing your life, right? At some point, you should. I'm not going to tell you have to, because you're your own person and I don't control that. But you should, and I can help you with that, as far as processing that.
I think we should all do it, the Good Energy Squad. The mission here is listen to us, and if you can relate.
Yeah.
Because there's people out there like me before this podcast that it was never going to talk to no one, not even my husband knows about my childhood. What if I didn't create this space for myself? And now I'm talking to you that actually just talked about childhood trauma. Yeah. And that's something that I have not talked to. Only my cousins that live with me know about it, because, like I said, you're my neighbor.
So what?
Nobody knows.
But I did have a couple questions for you that
I. This is an interview now.
Well, because I do kind of want to get to know you a little bit more.
We got time, don't worry.
I wanted to know, like, so how do you think your since we're talking about your past and everything, how do you think your past experiences have influenced the person you are today?
Well, it's shocking for the little pictures. It's very sad that I don't have a lot of memories from my childhood because I feel like I blocked them mentally, but I can ask around and for what I hear from people that grew up with me that I've been this cheerful person. It shocks me that I was so happy, but I know what I was living was an inferno and not even. And I think that it helped me, my happy personality, become who I am now and not let shit bother me. I'm not like the unbothered because I still hurt. It still hurts. My feelings are valid, but I could not give a fuck. That's where my zero fucks comes from my childhood.
Right, and I think that there's still a part of you that does, and you just don't realize that. Like, I think that even though you feel that, right, and you're telling yourself that, I think there's still a part of you that wants to process that, and it does bother you, so you don't want to face that, and that is a very difficult thing to go through, you know, because we try to tell ourselves that. I told myself that for many years, and then when I finally started processing that trauma, I realized, like, oh boy, like,
It's
I have
scary.
a lot, and it is scary. And when you said you blocked out a lot of stuff,
I did.
when I went through that intensive therapy, and it was like 2 months long, I started remembering things I completely forgot about.
I know,
and
I
it was
blocked them.
overwhelming, you know. But it's very overwhelming, and when you go through that, it's an emotional roller coaster, you know.
I feel like I buried it with my parents. It's sad,
Yeah.
but as sad as it sounds,
Yeah.
that's what it is. That I like to bury. Look, because I'm a, let's go. I just look ahead.
Is there a defining moment that, like, shaped your decision to join the Army?
I was homeless in the streets with no food, no roof, nowhere to go, house to house, with a bunch of bad people, doing a lot of bad things to survive. I'm not ashamed. I said it on my Spanish episode. I used my body how I had to use it. I've done things that, whatever. I dated cartel guys, whatever was for what I needed. The tits were completely sponsored by a Sicario. He calls me still from prison. I did what I had to do, as I've always been in survival mode. Unfortunately, ever since I was born.
Yeah.
Because ever since I can blink, it was domestic violence, left and right. So it was always trying to survive and avoid the bullets. And that's been my entire life. I feel like I've never catched a break on that. So when I got to the point that I was almost 27, I think I joined at 26, 2008, 2009. My best friend went and grabbed me from one of the houses that I had spent the night. My friend, because again, I had no place to sleep. And she said, "You're coming with me." And she took me in with her mom. She was still going to school for a nurse.
Right.
And I called the recruiter and said they could give me a place to stay. So that was my option. So I stayed. When I got accepted, there was no boot camp for 6 months.
Right.
So that's when my best friend offered me to stay with her, so I didn't have to be in the street for another 6 months, and got a job at a call center while I was living with her and her mom, and I would drive her to school, and I got this big, so I was obviously not doing drugs once she picked me out of the bad people. But that's way ahead. I was doing worse things prior to that, but that was the realization that I'm turning 27, 26. I can't be hoeing around. I don't look good all the time. I'm not gonna have my years that I had at 21 or when I was 18, when I could still be doing that lifestyle.
At any point when you were doing that, did you? And I'm asking this because it was something that went through my mind too, because I didn't put any value in the people I was seeing. You know, for a long period of time, I was doing it for, like, immediate pleasure. But
Gold digging.
But did you ever at any point think to yourself, like, I want someone to love me?
No, because
So-
I've always loved me.
Well, did you ever want, like, a man or to be? So when did you meet your husband? Did you meet him
In the Army.
in the Army?
Yeah, I'm fine with or without him. That's the thing. I never wanted a man. I guess because I grew up with that dad. I knew for a fact I wanted to be by myself and okay by myself.
Yeah.
I'm not all about. I mean,
That's it.
I love my husband. I give
That's
him all.
definitely it's definitely a lot to unfold there. There's a lot there.
Oh shit!
The show is not long enough.
No, I don't want no man.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
I'm not gonna lie. Like I said, the cartel ones, they were more like using them. I loved them, and I wasn't cheating on them. I was loyal, in that case, I was a good girlfriend. But I will be fine if they break up with me. I don't think I have ever cried for a boyfriend. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
cool.
How do you balance the extroverted, outgoing side of your personality with the need for introspection?
I don't even
Do you know
know
what
what
that means?
introspection is. So I don't balance it.
So, like I was telling you, like introverts tend to be, they think within themselves, like internally, and it's like intellectually, and they it's find balance in their lives. They are spending more time, kind of learning to be more comfortable with themselves and figuring themselves out, and they're comfortable within that quiet space. Whereas extroverted people seek that externally
No,
for others.
because
Do you ever find time to do introspection for yourself?
yes. I take a lot of self-care time for myself. I
Okay.
take care of myself first.
What are some things that you do?
I will watch my shows, not talk to my husband. This is me day. I don't even want to spend time with you today.
Okay.
This is my self day. I either take myself to get a facial or take a bath, lock myself in the room, stretch. I don't want to see him. I want to just do things and bring me joy for the moment. I go eat and take myself to eat by myself.
How do you feel when you do yoga?
I love it because I don't have my phone. I can just be with myself and my mind and my thoughts. But lately, well, maybe it's a yoga instructor, but I get real horny sometimes.
So introspection, that would be, that feeling that you have when you get done with yoga and you're like, it's just, you find that peace within yourself. That's somebody who's extroverted needs to find time for that.
Yes.
Just like somebody
important.
who's introverted at some point would need that social interaction externally as well at some point, right? But that's what I wanted to know is, do you find time for yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
If I'm not okay the way that I am, I've noticed because I'm this extroverted and loud and this have all this energy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If I don't control it, then it's a mess, and I'm a mess, and that energy shows, and I explode, and then it comes with like snapping, anger, the Latina side, and I don't like that side of me. That's why I had to quit drinking.
Yeah.
And going back to the army saved me from the streets and gave me purpose and gave me, I was clear of drugs to join the army and I have a new path ahead. I had nothing to do by 25. I was just a street drug addict, whore, basically, and it gave me a new chance. But then I became an alcoholic. So then it's like I've always tend to like get addicted to the next thing, and for once when I cleaned myself from completely alcohol and started running and then devote myself to my husband, I finally found myself in that peace that you're looking for. That it's like I'm happy with myself.
Right.
And that Sergeant Major in the plane, and I keep wanting to do this exercise, told me, I want to do it. When you lock yourself in the closet, dark, for as long as you have to, and if you laugh with yourself, and the first memory that comes can be anger, it can be happiness. But if you can make yourself laugh, you made it. You don't need nobody else. Like you're at peace with yourself.
Right.
But if there's anger and you can't even be with yourself, so I learned at a very young age to be with myself.
Be comfortable with yourself
with
in your own
myself.
skin.
No, because I had nothing around me and nobody. So it's very easy for me to be okay with myself, by myself, with nothing.
That's a conversation when I first started dating my husband. I told him, I said, I'm gonna lay all the cards out on the table. You're gonna know everything about me.
Oh yeah.
How many people I've slept with, all my history of abuse, all the things. I'm gonna lay it all out for you, and you can make. And I told him from the very beginning, like, this is your decision now. Like, you're getting involved with somebody who is telling you that she's broken, she's got some trauma, she's got these things. Are you willing to accept that about me? Like, I love you and I'm going to be devoted to you and I'm going to make this work, but I'm not going to have any, I'm not ashamed to tell you
Oh no,
these
that
things
that
that
has
I've been
to be
through.
told. That has to be told
Right.
because it's gonna come back later to bite
Well,
you.
yeah, and
It's a problem with people
Yeah.
that are dishonest, and the true colors always comes out.
Yeah.
I think it was until we moved in here.
Mhm.
I've been married since 2000. I've been with my husband since 2011. So he knew I had him and other boyfriends, and he knew about my cartel boyfriends. Like imagine if I don't mention that little past of me or where I'm from or Juarez, we go, I take him. It can get not only dangerous, but when we move here, I got the call out of nowhere. By the way, I haven't changed my number because I have nothing to hide. And there's no locks or anything. I said this multiple times. A lot of people change personalities or change lifestyles and bury their past, right? And then feel like they can start fresh. No, I've been carrying my stuff. I just don't talk about it. But if it's relative, obviously you want to say it. I'm not
Sure.
playing that I'm something that I'm not. You didn't meet me and I said, I've been with 2 men in my life,
Yeah.
or said that I'm this devoted, never done anything bad in my life person. Because there are people out there living this life.
Have you ever felt like
Well, but what I was saying, and it's hard to finish. When we moved here, we've been married for a long time. 2012, we got here in 2018. Is when I first, out of nowhere, and it brought me by surprise. My heart dropped. I got the call from Ramiro, my Sicario boyfriend, that is serving life. That bought me the tits. That has killed millions of people, and called me in my cell phone because I had the same number since we were dating in my 20s. And guess what? I came home. And I told Derek, because he had already know who Ramiro is. He's using the titty. He's on the phone. I would have had that. Other person would have had that for their husbands. They don't want to know who. He was okay with that. He understood, and then he let me talk to him. And then we called my best friend Christina. Christina was so scared when Ramiro called. And then he even sent me some selfies from prison. And I'm saying, you know what? I'm happy to see you. Like there's nothing. I didn't want to break my husband's trust, but it's those things always come back to bite you. So why not be honest?
So you're still friends, and that's okay.
Well, no, that was a one call maybe once a year.
Right. But it's okay. Like in some situations, it's okay. It's healthy to have.
But it was years the whole time that I've been with my husband. Imagine if I never mentioned him. That's what I'm saying.
Right. So being
I
forthright
gave the
with
cards
him,
before we got married.
but it's giving him an opportunity to decide whether or not if this is what he wants or not. You're giving him an option, and
Right.
your husband can be like, I'm not down
I don't
for
want
this,
this
I'm
crazy.
out, or okay, whatever, I got it. Have you ever, with some of the stuff that we've talked about, is there any kind of memories or triggers for you that you just avoid completely because it reminds you? So like, I'll give you an example. The 4th of July, okay, for me, I used to love the 4th of July when I was a little kid. And then on the 4th of July, when I was 19 years old, is when I confronted my father for the first time in person, not like to the authorities, but in person. Okay?
Face to face.
Face to face.
Brave.
In his face, confronted him, and that's when my brothers found out about what happened to me. That's when my stepmother found out, and all that. And for me, the 4th of July, from that point forward, was traumatic for me. I couldn't enjoy it because it reminded me of that. And so when I married my husband now, I just was so used to not celebrating the 4th of July. It was the first 4th of July, and he didn't really know, right? That was a trigger for me. And we lived in Hawaii, and we lived in this apartment complex where there was this big grassy open field and it overlooked all Oahu, and so you could see all the fireworks on the island. And he wanted to walk over, and I didn't want to tell him, about that particular thing,
because it's a sad thing. That's what I'm saying. I was very scared when I got that phone call too. I wanted him to know that.
I went out
But
and I sat with him on the blanket, and we watched the fireworks that night. And I had a wonderful time, and I cried, and I told him this is the first time since I was 19 years old that I've been out on the 4th of July, and I had a wonderful time. And for me, that recreated a new, wonderful, fond memory of the 4th of July with somebody I love.
That's amazing.
And so now every 4th of July, it's like one of my favorite holidays. My husband and I go all out. So I guess what I was asking is there something that you don't have to tell me?
I already said it. Oh, it's already
yeah.
traumatized, and I hate it. Mother's Day. I hate it.
So one of the things that I learned through therapy is recreating new memories.
Ugh. But I never became a mother, so that would have been
That's
like one
okay.
thing.
I mean, but it doesn't have to be that, right? So it can just be, and I'm not telling you to do this, but I'm just, it's a suggestion that if you have something that is triggering for you, okay, it's okay to create a new memory that brings you happiness. You can spend the day with all your friends. You, I mean, whatever,
Yeah,
you can do
the
something.
thing is, with America, I do like this, but it's different than Mexico, the Mother's Day. So my day that I hate is 10th of May. That is the Mexican Mother's Day. Mother's Day in Mexico is different than, we don't wait for a Sunday. You're gonna celebrate the 10th of May. So that is the trigger day for me. Because for the longest, before I started doing cigarettes, drugs, and a million things that you'll get to know later, luckily my husband knows and he listens. So I hope. Yes, I hope he knows everything. I'm not here gonna find out. I don't give a fuck. But what I'm saying is that day, I was a singer every day. I grew up being a singer. My mom would take me to singing competitions. I had my Selena. I said it's on my Spanish. She would make me outfit. Sing, sing, sing. So always fucking sang 10th Mother's Day festivals. I was the star, and everybody in my childhood can tell you. Then she dies, and because I'm still the star and I was the best singer, they forced me to keep doing it. But I never grieved, I never cried, I never yet healed. So I hated it even more because then I have to entertain still the fact everybody else was mother. And it was nice because I know my brother, sister, and my sister that raised me like my mom. I'm very close to my sister-in-law. My brothers, they will come and see me, and they're like, "You're singing for us," and I'm like, "I don't want to do this." Like something inside of me is like, "This is not what I want to do right after this." But they forced me to do it, and then at 14, I finally started in trouble.
I mean, maybe at some point you can think of something to do that will recreate like a core memory for you that will that will make that day a little less painful for you.
I loved singing my mother's Day
Sure,
songs.
yeah, and I love the 4th of July before,
I know,
you know.
and it's
it
not
doesn't-
against other mothers
Yeah.
though. Like I said, I'm glad that my sister and my
Right.
sister-in-law came to see me. I love singing that stupid song. I probably still know it, but it's just that I was not okay. I like doing it, and then they forced me to do it. I should have been not done it after. Maybe I need to take a break.
I still have things that I know I need to work on myself, you know, like today I heard a song on the radio, and it's the second it, or my phone, as soon as it came on, I immediately changed it because it just triggered a bad memory for me. My father was in the Marine Corps band, and he used to perform in parades, and this particular song that came on was a song that he was known for performing in the parade.
And you reminded me.
It reminded me of him.
Guess what? That song's coming to me right now. The one that I sang that I blocked it.
Yeah. I noticed you were disassociating.
You noticed it?
I could see it in your face.
Despacio. A ti que cambiaste tu mente, dolor y cansancio. How do I know this lyrics? Crazy. I have not heard this song since I was 12, 13, 14. Then I started doing drugs. Right after that. That's the song I sang since I was 3, 5 years old. And I don't know the full lyrics, but I dissociated because that song started coming to my head as I'm talking about. Yes.
Okay. So I want the listeners to hear this, what I'm about to say right now. This is why talk therapy is so important. This is why, and I this is how it changed my life. When you get to talk about this stuff, and you don't have to, like I said, it's you one bite at a time. You don't have to tackle everything.
I have to Google the song.
But when you start talking about this stuff, you'll start having memories come back that you've blocked out, and that happens during like cognitive behavioral therapy. They do that. That's more intensive. That's like 8 to 12 weeks. That's a very long time to go through there, and you're like one-on-one with your therapist individually, and hopefully one day I can get to that point where I can help people process,
right.
You know.
And what I want to do is this part.
Yeah.
This is what I'm good at.
So what just happened right now, that is exactly what I'm learning about, is that, you know, when you, and I did it myself when I went through therapy, when you talk about stuff, memories will start, and who knows, maybe tonight before you go to bed, you like lay in bed and you're like, oh my gosh, I just remembered something else. Like things will start core
Maybe
memories
this
will
is a
start.
bad idea.
No.
Thank you for coming today. This episode is over. I don't want to remember no fucking songs that I
So-
sang when I was sick.
Speaking of memory, though,
But thank you.
how much? I don't want to like ramble. Like I can talk
No.
about this stuff forever. So let me know. I'm just letting you know I
Okay.
can talk forever. So another thing when we talk about memory, have you seen the movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet? They're dating.
yes.
Okay,
Oh,
a long time ago.
yeah.
All right. And the premise behind the movie is they fall in love, and then their relationship slowly becomes toxic, and then they break up.
Every relationship, huh?
Yeah.
Let's be
but,
honest.
But they break up. It gets a little difficult, and
Every
they're
relationship.
becoming very toxic with each other, and then they break up. Well, then Kate Winslet, she Clementine, I think was her name in the movie. She goes to this clinic to get her brain her memories of her relationship with him erased.
What? Like
And
Men in
then-
Black?
Sort of
Huh.
like that,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's like they hook this thing up to her head, and anyway, so she gets her memory erased of him, and then he finds out that she did that, and he's devastated. Well, then he's like, fine. He goes to do it, and he's got to bring all these things, right, that they had together, memories they shared together, and allegedly, like, it scans it, and then it scans the brain, and it erases it out of your memory.
That would be
through
cool.
but through the well, so you think, but it's impossible, right? So that's why it's good to talk. It's good to go through this stuff because you
They
can't.
fell in love
You
again?
can't. They fell in love again
Of
at
course.
the end.
It's-
Well, it's a really good movie. It's sad. It's very emotional, but because a lot. And
the
there's
brain never sleeps.
No.
Even when we do drugs, I can tell you this.
But there's times
still there.
where I wish I could eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, my brain, because I
I've
want to
done
get
it.
rid of some
I
things.
cannot.
Well,
You want to bring it back?
No, I want to. I
Erase
wish
it.
there's been times where I wanted to, right? I wish I could just never have to think about that stuff again. But it's there, right? And so the whole point of this is that we need to learn how to deal with those emotions and that grief in a healthy way
Correct.
and in a more positive way.
Well, that's what I have. That's what I
Yeah.
can bring. The
So,
positive
yes,
out of
and
everything.
being able to talk about it. And sometimes working towards being positive isn't always a positive feeling.
No,
Sometimes
it's a lot of
very
dark.
difficult.
No,
It's a
people
lot of
don't
darkness.
understand that.
Yeah.
I am full of dark and lived a lot of dark. Like, you didn't know I joined the army because I was homeless.
No.
That's the
I
only
was
reason.
curious. I've never asked you that question.
That's
so,
the only reason why I was
Yeah.
in the street, and
Yeah.
it saved my life, and I met the love of my life. Thank you,
Yeah.
Hunter. I'm talking about my dog. No, my
Of course.
It's my dog. I got to get to Hunter, and the deployment child. I'm gonna make fun of him because I have a deployment child too.
Yeah. I met my
raised
husband
it.
on deployment.
Really?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, again, see, and a lot of people don't know this because I'm not out there telling these things. I worked so much
Yeah.
on myself,
Mhm.
and I had to do the therapy for me was forced because of rehabs, right? And oh my God, she lost her parents. We gotta force her. My family was like my sister. She just wanted me not to go dark. I had to. I told her I had to live that. I had to touch rock bottom multiple times throughout my lifetime and make 1,000 mistakes. We both have. And live horrible, traumatizing experience to be where we are today.
And to take accountability for your
And be able to
actions.
tell everything that I've done is my fault. I picked the Sicarios.
Yeah, because like even in my own life, I know that even though I dealt with a lot of trauma and a lot of
I
unfortunate
never
things.
blamed that to be.
I knew
to
when
fuck
I
up.
was making some decisions, I knew that this was probably not the best decision, or this could lead to a very not so good outcome. So I take responsibility and ownership of my actions. And another thing, nobody can control your response. Nobody can
Nobody.
control your emotions and how you respond to those situations. That's only you can control that. So if you can learn that, somebody doesn't make you angry.
Exactly. And
Somebody
how to
doesn't
react.
make
And nobody forces you to
yeah,
do
it's-
anything. You are the owner of your own relationships. You
in
can
control.
in control 1000%. And if you and why I created this space is because of people that maybe are afraid to speak up and admit that they are not in a happy situation, because it's easy for us to talk about our childhood because it already happened, right? But what if somebody's living it right now and they're living in the dark spot and they're like, I don't have money to go to a therapist, I can't see a licensed physician, I can't tell my friends because they'll judge me. They don't have real friends around them. I base my whole life on being real and being who I am, and unless you ask me, I'm not hiding it, but you have to ask me, right? of certain situations
Sure.
because I'm not comfortable. Clearly, I blocked it for my own self as my healing, as my coping mechanism. But I'm very open to talk about it and still not gonna damage the progress or how I act because that's my personality, right? I know who I am.
Well, I'll be honest. If anybody's listening right now and they're suffering or they're dealing with some difficult things and they're looking for advice on where they can seek help, how they can seek help, what they can do as far as self help, by all means reach out to
we're
me.
here.
You can,
We're
I
here.
will,
This
or
is-
reach out to Pauline and I will
We'll send you the
her the
resources.
information, the resources. Like I 100%. That's not a waste of my time. It doesn't hurt me, and I don't mind doing it. It's what I plan to do for a living. So.
And this is what I want to do for a living too. That's
Yeah.
why we're being vulnerable with you guys. You have to be able to understand that you know what you lived through. We're adults. We know what we've done, and we're not blaming our traumas. And Kate, by no means, she's a survivor. I'm gonna tell you this to your face. I have not. There's things that I'm too just finding out, just like you're questioning me that we didn't know about each other because we put this face, right? It's not a fake face, but this is what we are now, right? It's hard to peel the potato, right? So we're peeling the potato because we want to be honest and we want the audience to know that we exist.
Yeah, and I just want them to know that we all face trauma in some way, shape, or form, and don't compare and despair your experiences to anybody else's and think, well, theirs is worse than mine, so I don't know what I'm complaining about. Don't ever do that either, because everybody's got different levels of resiliency, and what we've faced in our life is in how we learn to deal with that is all different. So never compare and despair your experiences with anybody else's, and just know that
and don't be ashamed.
We're all, it's all relatable, and those who've experienced a lot of the stuff that we've been through, like I find that a lot of us, like people like us, we're not judgmental.
No.
Nothing surprises
me.
me.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Nothing
no,
surprises
you
me.
can't tell me.
I hadn't even get into some of this crazy
We're
stories.
done. My husband knows what I've done, and I don't care if he
Swinger
doesn't.
stories, girl. I've seen it all. I'm telling you, that was a whole nother thing with my ex-husband.
Oh, we're gonna talk about it. This is juicy gossip.
But that was a very traumatic experience for me.
We're gonna talk about it. But who
you
wants
know.
another episode with Kate? I'm gonna do a poll at the end of this episode because me and Kate can talk for hours. She's such a good listener, and I always want to make her laugh. I want my friends to be happy. At the end of the day, I want at this moment.
Yeah.
So if you have something dark, just know you're gonna get the light. I think you're in an amazing place in your life, finding what you want to do.
Yeah.
I'm excited for my new baby. And a secret, I'm actually getting a new baby tomorrow. The second love of my life.
So
And he's so adorable. And it's gonna be more good energy. So I can help you in the part that what you can do to make yourself a little happier and live your daily life while you need somebody like Kate to dig into your past. So I will definitely have her back we can move to the next layer of traumas.
And again, I'm not a psychologist yet, but I'm deeply in school right now, like studying, and I've got like a total of 13 psychology classes, and I'm learning so much.
And you have the experience.
15, I'm sorry.
You have the experience.
Yeah.
Like you just.
Well, that's another thing. My life experiences.
15 traumas that
so
you can help people that live that and they can't
Yeah.
afford a therapist. They just want to hear how did you and this still found your love after that first horrible marriage. There's people out there still married because they think there's no hope for a second marriage.
My ex-husband used to say, you'll never find anybody that loves you the way I do. And I was like, well, shit, I hope not. I don't ever want to find somebody that loved me the way he did, But again, those are very manipulative things and behaviors, and we can talk about narcissism and manipulation and all that stuff another time. That's a whole nother topic. I love talking about that. So.
We need to. But thank you for coming tonight.
No, thank you for having me.
Now I feel like I need a cigarette. Here comes the toxic traits. But see, at least I admit I know what I can do and I can't. We're in a better place. That's
hopefully you guys could hear us, and we're not like making all kinds of weird noises in the back on my breathing.
Fuck it. This is the start.
I always wonder,
The message is what matters, and this is why I'm living proof that nobody has to believe in you. You just gotta believe in yourself.
That's right.
See ya. What did you think?
Girl, sweaty.
I didn't know you were gonna ask me those questions. I didn't even know you
Mama, give me
knew.
a hug.
I didn't even know you didn't know how I joined the army.
That was wild watching you like that. You completely, like, in the video, you'll probably